Hey everyone, before we get started, take a second to like and subscribe to the show.
It's the best way to help us share great information with more people. Thank you.
Okay, welcome back to this episode of Care Lab. We are picking up where we left off with a true story of severe financial exploitation of a woman with dementia. And here to tell us that story is Chip Wallace. Chip, the last time you were here, we stopped with you telling us about you and your sister being removed as powers of attorney from all of the paperwork. Okay, let's pick it up right there.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. And it was actually medical power of attorney. So we were removed and they added on a friend of my mother's, actually two friends of my mother's. And both of them, I laughed because I knew they would be people that would not ask any questions. They basically were going to be silent. And so that was put in place there in August of 2019. And the month before I left off, my sister had been emailing the CPA asking information on, different things, the will and other pieces. And eventually she got an email from him that said, your mother has asked us not to send you any more information. That was also what led us to ask for that capacity letter.
I was just going to ask about that actually. Like in this process of like when you found out that you're off the medical power of attorney, what was y'all's communication with your mother directly? How was that like?
It was light. We had a history of my sister would talk to her more, but my mother was always a challenge to talk with, because she was more interested, we'll say it, in herself. And it was hard to talk about other things. And so we didn't. And so I would talk to her, maybe once every few weeks, where my sister might talk to her weekly. And it's been like that for years, even before she had started having illness signs. But kind of stepping back, how she found a caregiver, is what you guys had mentioned. I forgot how to bring that in. So she was in a high-rise condo. There was a lady next door that had caregivers that were attending to her. And one of the caregivers was this caregiver. And the adult daughter of that lady would come over every day at random times, started putting cameras up in the room, and was basically monitoring.
Wait, in your mother's house?
No.
Started putting
and the neighbors.
The neighbor.
She was
okay.
This was going on in the neighbor's condo next door.
Okay.
So the caregiver was working there first, had been there for about 6 months, and the neighbor's daughter, adult daughter, would go over randomly each day, was watching, putting things in a safe that would, for the valuables, as well as putting cameras up. So this caregiver needed another victim because it wasn't going to be her because she's being watched. And my mother was, scooting around the hallways of the condo, and it was obviously signed by the way she walked that she had some issues. And they had a conversation, and the lady next door, the way the condo is set up, her kitchen door opened up to where my mother's front door was. And so she would sneak out and bring extra food over to my mother. And that's kind of how they started. And the passage is, she came bringing bagels, and that's kind of how she started doing it. And so she folded into bringing food over a few months through it, 2018. Then she suddenly started spending the night that summer. My mother would ask her to stay. Her home was the south part of town, about 25, 30 minutes south. And so she kept her there, and it kind of started where she was spending the night several nights a week. And so that was through 2018. We had the neurology visit there at the end of 2018, beginning of 2019. She's in the room. She sees issues are going on. And we get to the summer issue of the capacity letter. We're kicked off. We found out we were kicked off. We both received letters in the mail. My mother didn't write physical letters. We would communicate by email or text. We open it up, and it says something about, we've removed you from the HIPAA and because of this or that. And basically we need somebody in town nearby in case there's an emergency. And my argument was, well, you know what? There's not a maximum number of people you can have medical power of attorneys. So all you had to do was add them. You didn't have to remove us. And then the letter was signed by my mother's name, and we called her mother always. And it was written just the word mother, and it was obvious. It looked like somebody who was 5 had written it, that part of the letter. But the letter was typed, and there were misspellings in it. So I knew it came from the caregiver because I found later she used to type stuff and it was always misspelled. So we get the letters and we're off. And so now we're like, what are we going to do? Because we don't have any communication. They won't tell us stuff. So we're like, let's start off with a private investigator. So my sister is an attorney. I joke she's barred in 3 states. So she was Texas, California, and Alaska. And so she's living up in the Seattle area, and we get a private investigator through a attorney friend she had in Houston, and do a background check. Comes back in the middle of September, and we see some stuff, but you're like, there's no sign that she has a history of, we'll call it, thief, robbing people. But you'd only have that if she'd ever been caught and convicted. And so there's no background information other than you see that with one group, there's a senior organization there in Dallas, and she had worked with them for a year. And that was it. And other than that, and then she had a weird last name suddenly for a little bit, and we didn't know at the time what that meant. So we didn't have anything to go on. So this was September of 19. And in the middle of the month, my sister gets a phone call to tell us that she's now living in a hotel. I'm like, what are you living in a hotel for? She says, well, I got up one morning and went to go to the bathroom, and the rug was wet. And so there had been a flood in the bathroom, and it got on the walls and all over. And so I can't be in the apartment because it's got to be renovated. They pulled up floors and whatnot. And I was like, how is that possible? There's a toilet in there in the back. You have to have help going to the bathroom. How did it suddenly flood? It's like someone had flushed the toilet like multiple times. There's no way it would have flooded that much, but nobody would ever explain it. And so she was out of out of her condo, and she's now in a hotel. And a month or so passes, and they move her into a new condo south of where she used to live, about 10 miles or so. Being in Dallas, it was in the Turtle Creek area. And so
That's pretty significant
it
number
was.
of miles in DFW.
And she doesn't know anybody there in the building. And so this is late 2019, has no friends. So now she's isolated. But part of it always been when we did the capacity letter, I didn't believe that, she's overspending on groceries, whatnot. What else could possibly, there's these people are watching her, the fiduciaries. What are they going to do? So she moves into the new place in 2019. And then we finally decide to go visit her in January. And my mother sends a note back saying, don't come visit me. I'm going through some stuff. I'm not sure how long it's going to be like this. And we're like, well, no, I'm still going to come visit. So I set up a ticket to fly down there in March of 2020. The week I was to fly down there was COVID lockdown. So I don't go down. And I don't see her physically until January of 22.
Oh, wow.
My sister went and saw her in the summer of 21. But from that point on, we'd have some phone calls with her, but we didn't have any medical information comments. Nobody would tell us anything. We found out later that, the caregiver was essentially grooming everybody that was around her to that we were the bad people. All we wanted was my mother's money. We didn't care about anything else going on. And so in 2020, the caregiver kind of took over my mother's phone, and she wasn't typing, so she couldn't email. And so we would get random notes, but we never had good information until, well, unfortunately, after she passed, which was in March of 22.
Wow. Okay. So you try to see her in 2020. It's the same week the COVID shutdown happens.
Mm-hmm.
And then from that point forward, you basically don't see her until almost right before she passes.
Correct.
It sounds like. What was going on in your head kind of during that time, thinking about what to do, when you should go see her,
Right. Yeah,
all of that?
we tried a couple of times, and my mother would go, oh, no, no, no. The building manager says nobody can come visit, where there's COVID in the building. You can't come visit. And so she was regularly isolated with those folks. She saw the CPA. They would meet to do bills because he was paying her bills, had been doing it for a year or so. And my sister would try to call. We would call. She wasn't really good with the phone, so it would be on speaker. We knew somebody was there, whether it was her main caregiver or the people that she had helping her out. And it was just kind of like, hope they're taking care of her. We can't do anything, can't get down there. We've got full-time jobs. How do you get down and do this? And thinking she's being watched. And unfortunately, like I said, she was grooming everybody. And so they all believed her. She was good.
I think that might be a good place to to take a pause here. If you made it to the end of this episode, please make sure to like, subscribe, share, follow. That way you will get a notification when the next part of this series drops, because I am sure I am on the edge of my seat wanting to know what the heck happens next, and I'm sure you are too. So again, make sure to like, subscribe, follow, and we'll see you right back here on the next episode of Care Lab. Bye.
Bye.